I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Encinitas City Council for March 15th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And if the clerk would please call the roll.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Blackwell,
Here.
Councilmember Haylers,
Here.
Councilmember Hinsey,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Lyons,
Here.
and Mayor Kranz.
Here.
Record will show that all members of the City Council are present this evening.
Thank you. And with that, I'd like to ask you to rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thank you. We have a couple proclamations and presentations today. And the first one is to our Public Works Department, and they are being recognized by the American Public Works Association as an accredited public works agency. And nothing illustrates how important our Public Works Department is than to see the team out addressing the emergencies that have developed with the rainstorms that we've been having. They've been creating quite a bit of havoc, and it's Director Mabry and his team that have been out working to alleviate flooding to the best of their ability, address potholes lately, and a number of other things. So with that, I would like to ask him to come up and say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor Kranz. We're excited and happy to achieve reaccreditation through the American Public Works Association. This is our third reaccreditation, and basically it confirms that we have the right policies and practices in place to provide quality services to our community. We started the process back in September, and it's a self-voluntary practice. We started back in September, and it involved self-evaluation. So we put together a self-evaluation team of various members from other departments within the city. And so we went through and just went through each practice and made sure we were in compliance with the recommended practices of the APWA. And so we submitted our application. I want to thank Ashley Shratakis for leading our submittal process, and along with all the departments for giving us information for our submittal. This accreditation it's a continuous process. So the accreditation status lasts for 4 years, and at the end of that time frame, we'll go through this process again. And the reason behind that is because policies, they get updated. Public Works is an evolving field. So as they evolve these policies and practices, we want to make sure we're evolving also and be compliant. I also have a video clip from the APWA president.
Hello, I'm Keith Pugh, President of the American Public Works Association. I'm excited to be here and thank you for allowing me a moment to recognize one of your departments. The City of Encinitas Department of Public Works is responsible for maintaining and improving Encinitas public infrastructure and public properties. The department contains divisions devoted to roads and highways, parks and recreation facilities, public buildings, and fleet maintenance. The Public Works staff also coordinated the completed renovations to City Hall, which included 10 vehicle charging stations. The purpose of APWA's accreditation program is to provide a means to formally verify and recognize public works agencies for compliance with the recommended practices set forth in the Public Works Management Practices Manual. This is a voluntary and self-motivated program. Accredited agencies have made the commitment to continuous improvement in the delivery of public works operations and services in the community it serves. And those accredited agencies have achieved a high level of professionalism and credibility. The City of Encinitas Department of Public Works was initially accredited in 2010. A team of experienced public works evaluators reviewed 149 practices to confirm their compliance with internationally recognized management practices applicable to the agency's operations and responsibilities. In fact, 3 of the city's practices will be shared with other communities as model practices. I'll include the evaluator comments with each one. Practice 2.31, Human Resource Management, Employee Recognition. Your secret sauce ingredients program is worthy of note as a model practice. Practice 25.2, under Street Maintenance, Preventive Maintenance. The Street Maintenance Division Operations Overview for 22-23 is a well-prepared document. Practice 30.17, Drinking Water Distribution System, Incentives for Water Conservation. Water efficiency webpage is very clear and easy to follow. So with this, I would like to thank the Mayor, Tony Krantz, and the Encinitas City Council for investing in such a worthwhile program. Your support demonstrates your continuing desire to ensure your community is being operated and managed in an efficient manner consistent with industry best management practices. I'd also like to thank Public Works Director Sylvester Mabry and Accreditation Manager Ashley Stratakis for their willingness to lead the department to this level of recognition. The city's commitment to continuous improvement follows along with my late father's life philosophy. Leave things better than you found them. And with that, I'm proud to present the City of Encinitas, California Public Works Department with their 3rd reaccreditation. Congratulations, great work.
I could take a photo.
Okay, our next presentation tonight is in honor of Women's History Month. And what we're going to do here is have 5 presentations to women that were selected by each council member and myself. And we're going to work from Allison on down this way. So Councilmember Blackwell, yep, you go over there. The mic's right there, and it's all yours.
You never know what I'll do with this when I get a mic in my hand, right? Should I have the person come up if they're here? All right, I will. Katya, could you join me up here? So there were a lot of people in District 1 women I could have picked. This happens to be a neighbor of mine, Katya Sonweger, and it's not because she's a neighbor that I chose her. It's because being her neighbor, I got to learn her story. And so Katya was born and raised in Kherson, Ukraine. You can probably tell from the sunflowers. She left 6 years ago when she met Kurt, who was there on a business trip. She was his English translator. It worked out well, right? They fell in love, got married, and now they have 2 children, and she is a local Encinitas resident. In February 2022, everything changed. Russia attacked her home country. Her family and friends in Kherson, including her parents and her grandmother, were forced to deal with the invasion, make many hard choices. Do they stay? Do they flee? Can they flee? Where will they go? Meanwhile, for Katja, it became an obsession to help the people in her hometown. Even though she was very far away, based here, every day she's online, texting and using different social media platforms to coordinate with Ukrainian volunteers and to help the people survive this nightmare in her hometown. In last October, she teamed up with a local business person, Michael Harth, who's also a philanthropist, and they did a series of fundraisers for Kherson. They've raised money to help aid organizations based in Ukraine buy life necessities, including warm clothes, supplies, medication, and building materials to repair their homes and roads. And to date, she has helped raise $56,000 just since October. I have deep admiration for Katja, who has this burden of war on her shoulders every day, and yet has turned the burden into action. I'm really proud to recognize her as a District 1 representative or resident for Women's History Month, who's making a difference every day.
I'd like to recognize Joya Messinger, who is a longtime Levenheim resident, successful high-tech entrepreneur, and dedicated proponent of gender equality. Unfortunately, she can't make it tonight because, and I'll talk about that. But Joya founded and currently leads Linked Objects, a strategic advisory services business focused on digital transformation. She previously was founder and CEO of AVAC, and AVAC is now known as Arlo Technologies. They're a pretty big company, a leading home security system company. You may have seen or possibly own one of their small white battery-operated cameras. I have a bunch of these at home, and they are uniquely shaped and with a magnetic swivel mount. She designed and launched these here in San Diego. So Joya is a serial entrepreneur, having founded and led several technology companies, but she also serves on corporate and university boards, including the UCSD's Dean's Council of Advisors for the Jacobs School of Engineering. She wanted to attend tonight's meeting, but she was unable to because of a prior commitment with one of those boards. So in addition to her distinguished career as a venture-backed entrepreneur and technology executive, Joya has dedicated her time to gender equality initiatives, specifically around early education and women in the workplace. She was a mentor and advisor to countless students and entrepreneurs. She was a founding board member and advisor to My Startup XX, a business accelerator at UCSD created to address the lack of female participation in technology startups. By the way, the My Startup XX, the XX is because of the female chromosome. And she's a mentor and advisor for Ad Astra Ventures, an accelerator exclusively focused on women-led innovations. Early in her career, she was a mentor for the Sally Ride Foundation, encouraging middle school girls to participate in science, math, and engineering. And more recently, she judged the Women's Safety X Prize, a global competition that challenged teams to create technology to ensure women's safety. So for all of these reasons, I heartily recognize Joya in the name of International Women's Day, celebrating women's rights and gender equality. And I'll present this to her later. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So District 2 has a lot of wonderful women, and it was very difficult to choose just one. But once I made that choice and delved into this person's life, it was clear to me that she was so deserving of this. And I think what's very unique about this person is that she is a teenager. And to me, that really made an impression because she has been to these council chambers more times than probably 99% of Encinitas residents in just her short life. And she also, she's younger than me, but I really look up to her. So I'd like to invite Joy Rupert to join me up here for a photo. And I will just give a little bit of detail about what Joy does. And this paragraph is embarrassingly short because Joy's accomplishments are so many. And so Joy is an exceptional member of the Encinitas community, and her years of service to our city as a youth commissioner, in addition to her activism and advocacy in the San Diego High School Union District, has resulted in a better quality of life for her fellow students, and I will have to say for our whole community. Joy is a distinguished leader among her peers as ASB president, co-president of the Multicultural Anti-Racism Coalition, co-lead of Encinitas for Equality Youth Group, and a recipient of the North County Woman of Distinction Award. I was a study buddy, and I hear you're a study buddy mentor. You're an anti-racism educator and a powerful thought leader within our community. Joy inspires admiration and action by her leadership. So here is your presentation, and we'll have the city manager take a photo.
All right, thank you. We have so many amazing people in our community and amazing people in District 3. The women who have been in leadership positions, many of you know, and it was very hard to choose. So I ended up moving in a little slightly different direction that I thought would cover some folks who perhaps my colleagues weren't covering, and I looked internally into the city. And so I'd like to ask Sydney Hammerness to come up and join me up here. I'm honoring Sydney today. She is the sergeant for the Encinitas Marine Safety Division, and Sydney is the first woman Encinitas Marine Safety Supervisor. I always think it's very novel and worth calling out when women serve in leadership in non-traditional fields. And not only does Sydney do that, but she's got some accomplishments and focuses that are really important to mentoring the next generation of women leaders. She joined the city in 2014 and was promoted to sergeant in 2021 and excels at leadership. She models leadership to youth through her work at the program as the program coordinator for the Junior Lifeguards, which is one of our most popular City of Encinitas programs, oversubscribed every year. She runs this program, which teaches life-saving skills, leadership, and civic responsibility. She is passionate about shining a positive light on women in lifeguarding and has put together a public information piece on women in lifeguarding. I'd like you to join me in acknowledging Sydney Hammerness for her achievements.
Yay, Sydney.
Thank you. And I would like to call up Tiana Haydick. A little backstory here. When I was at my first meeting, chairing my first meeting, I had the pleasure of having her father, who is kind of a serial commenter. He does a lot of oral communications over the years, over the 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And he was here to speak. He was the first who gave oral communications at that meeting, and I was honored by that. We were sitting out in the hall, and his daughter was there with us, and I asked him about his son, Frankie Hayduck, who was a professional soccer player, an outstanding athlete at San Diego High School, and had won a number of awards, played for the national team, was very accomplished. And Tiana was sitting right next to us, and super humble, and didn't point out that she had accomplished quite a bit herself. And when she came up and spoke that night, much like her father giving us the business for having backstops that were broken at the softball fields, I found out that she was also an outstanding athlete who had accomplished a lot as a softball player and soccer player in her career. So when I was throwing out the opening pitch for the Girls Softball League this year, she was there with her team, and it just reminded me that in terms of honoring someone who has accomplished a lot, a woman who has accomplished a lot, she was very deserving of this. So I will point out that she started playing softball at the age of 8 and became an all-star soon thereafter. She played soccer and softball at San Diego High School and was the San Diego Player of the Year in 1994 when her team won the CIF championship. Her softball career continued at the University of Arizona, and she played on teams that set an NCAA record, 47 wins in a row. And she won the championship. Her team won the championship twice as part of that streak. Tiana became a doctor of chiropractic and has a successful practice here in Encinitas, and she is currently sharing her softball expertise by coaching a team in the San Diego Youth Softball League, and she is bringing her life experience and love of softball full circle. So thank you very much. Can we have everybody come back up and get a group picture here? Get behind whoever you awarded something to. You're not. You're good. All right, thank you all. And not on our agenda, I would also like to make an introduction to everyone. Captain Lawrence, if you could come up to the staff dais there. Recently, the Sheriff's Department made some promotions. Our Sheriff's Captain Lopez was promoted to Commander, and we were fortunate to have the opportunity to see our Lieutenant Lawrence, who has been actively involved in policing our city and is very well aware of some of the challenges that we have. He has recently been promoted to captain and will lead the coastal station here in Encinitas. So congratulations on your promotion.
Thank you, Mayor.
And if you'd like to say a few words and talk a bit about your goals and objectives, perhaps?
Of course. So first off, I'd just like to thank the mayor, the council, and city staff for how responsive you are to public safety needs within the city, the communication that we have and the relationships. It's what really makes this community great and allows the Sheriff's Department to provide the safe place that this community really experiences day to day. Since my time as acting captain, which began just before Christmas, I want to continue the objectives that I've already put in place at the station. Currently, right now, we're at 30% below our violent crime rate that we saw last year and 18% below our property crime rate that we saw last year. So I have a fantastic staff that works hard every day, represented here by these two gentlemen, but 100 other deputies that are at the station, not only the deputies, but community service officers, senior volunteers, and a myriad of other volunteers that help us out daily. So that is my primary objective, is just to continue to make this place beautiful, a phenomenal community to live in. And I'm also looking forward to work a little bit more with Chief Gordon and improve that relationship and just public safety as a whole. So.
Excellent. And the Sheriff's Department has a fairly, their programs generally captains rotate out after a couple of years. Captain Lawrence is the 6th captain that has been in leadership here in the city of Encinitas, and it kind of presents a challenge as a contract city that we have the turnover. So it's especially nice to have someone who's been around take the leadership helm, and so he's got that continuity that provides him with the ability to step right in and lead. So thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, oral communications.
Yes, Mayor, we do have 5. The first 3 are Geraldine Kessler, Trina Priest, and then Suzanne Hume.
Yeah, it came out good.
Sorry. I would like to get you up to speed with the Melba project. The owner and developer have been meeting with the neighbors in hopes that we could come to middle ground on some of the development. I'm sorry to report that very little has been accomplished, only stress and anxiety after these meetings with exasperating health problems shortly after, especially with the continuous changing plans over 3.5 years with the drainage and the runoff. I don't know if you know this, but at least 5 of the neighboring residents to the development are between the ages of 70 and 80 plus years young. These are stellar senior tax-paying residents of the community who have asked for so little from the city and have quietly and humbly raised their families. And now, at this point in their lives, simply would like to just age in place. But unfortunately, they are forced to deal with the uncertainty that the quality of their life will hold due to the housing project hanging over the neighborhood. I'm not aware of any other cultures that does this to the aging senior population. The senior citizens will be losing their tree canopy for sure. The grading and the plans are not conducive to trees, and we have all had the clear message. The unofficial wildlife corridor will be replaced with hardscape. These factors only bring sadness to our tight-knit community. Please support the community and preservation of this property before it's too late, like that Fluvia project on Hymenaeus in 2016. It's almost identical to this property. That property was also rich in Encinitas history. The original owner of that property was Henry Potter, who developed a patent for overhead irrigation systems, which helped with the development and agriculture of the industry of South Coast Park, also known as Leucadia. Yet the historical report on this project said they could not find any significant about him or the other owners of this property, but I was able to find it with a simple Google search. There were also 3 beautiful homes, very similar to the ones on the Melba Road, but those were built in 1928 on that property are now gone, and we will never get that piece of Encinitas history back. Let us please not pass on this beautiful, sacred Melba property that is so rich in Encinitas history. Please support the community by acquiring this property with soft green infrastructure funding, community funding, state or federal grants or bonds for open space. The property is ideal for an outdoor STEM lab, Oakcrest Middle School, and the neighboring schools, which surely will be needing more space with all the housing projects coming in. This is also ideal for open space park, similar to San Diego Park, or an annex for the Botanical Gardens, which is connections with Anton Van Amersfoort. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Krantz and City Council. I am a middle school teacher and parent of 3 teens who has spoken here before regarding what we see with our students' mental health needs. Last City Council meeting, I spoke about a webinar for educators, parents, and caregivers entitled Connection Between Vaping, Cannabis, Mental Health, and it was narrated by Willow Jenkins, a child psychologist and inpatient medical director at Rady's Children's Hospital, and it was co-sponsored by the County Office of Education. Dr. Jenkins reported, "When it comes to youth, I worry that there is perception that marijuana is harmless in children. Our data tells us otherwise. Our data tells us that a significant portion of youth who use marijuana will develop a clinical addiction to marijuana. And with underlying mental health conditions, the numbers are even more substantial." On Thursday, just last week, Rady Children's Hospital participated in a press conference, and pediatrician Dr. Natalie Laub spoke to another growing problem among children, a dramatic increase both locally and nationally, and that is the number of young children ending up in the hospital after eating cannabis products. She said their average patient suffering from the effects of cannabis ingestion is just 2 years old. Dr. Laub said that in about 80% of the cases, the children are discovering edibles in their home environment. Quote, "They're finding edibles that are left in purses, in bedside tables, on the ground, in junk drawers. Wherever these edibles are, they're eating them because they're delicious and they're colorful and they look like gummy bears." Dr. Laub has been studying cannabis ingestion in children since 2014 and said that before 2020, there were 5 to 6 cases a year at Rady Children's Hospital. Last year, Laub said there were more than 150 cases and that they're tracking even more so far this year. As marijuana storefronts show up here in Encinitas, unfortunately, parents and caregivers now have one more problem to have to watch out for. Thank you for your time.
Next speaker is Suzanne Hume, followed by John Bodorf, followed by Yesenia Hernandez.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Suzanne Hume. I'm the Educational Director and founder of Clean Earth for Kids. And it's so wonderful to be here at Encinitas. And thank you so much for the really important actions that you've taken, climate action, and done so many wonderful things. It's a beautiful, wonderful city. We have a few suggestions of a few things that are really important to take action on. And so we must protect the air our children breathe, the water they drink, the places that they play. And so there are some very important things that need to happen right away. Please direct staff to put these, to do what they need to do for their staff reports and put this on the next city council meeting. As you know, we've been here speaking before, and we've asked you to please stop the toxic pesticides used here in the city of Encinitas. You are using, hold on, 4 or 5 banned in other countries? You are using 5 pesticides banned in other countries, including imidacloprid, that's a neonicotinoid pesticide. Neonicotinoids not only wipe out bees, but they're neurotoxic and harm children's development. For more information on this, please check out cleanearthforkids.org, Team 5, Stop Toxic Pesticides. You can also see, because we ask the city of Encinitas and others for public records, so we're very aware of what is used where. I was poisoned by pesticides, as you know, by West Coast tomato growers in the city of Oceanside. So I left my job as a teacher, and I work for free almost every day. We have fabulous Yesenia here, and Vanessa Forsyth works with many of our interns. We now have interns all over the entire country, many getting their master's in public health. We've been shouted out by Harvard Law School and others. My point in saying all this is I've learned so many things, and with my pesticide poisoning, throughout the tragedy, throughout the pain, throughout having to move from my home because I can endure no more pesticides, I've learned a lot of stuff. And again, I'm a really hard worker. I wake up at early, and I stay up late doing this work. I'm asking you to stop the toxic pesticides. The city of Oceanside took action on this so long ago. Yes, they're still leasing to West Coast tomato growers that poisoned me, sadly, and so is the county of San Diego. However, immediately when I brought this forward, the city of Oceanside, bam. So what's happening with the city of Encinitas? You need to ask yourselves, who is blocking this and why? Also, please stop wood smoke. Wood smoke can cause an instant heart attack, asthma attack, or stroke on the spot. Now that I have a lung condition, I can't live in Encinitas. You have too much wood smoke. The air is terrible here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John Botto for the cleanearthforkids.org, and I'm here to talk about synthetic turf, plastic grass, artificial grass. And my ask would be that the city do not incentivize or install any synthetic turf in Encinitas, and also do a moratorium on installations in the city until you can develop regulations to stop installation. And the reason is, one, it's plastic. So think about all the great work you guys have done to stop single-use plastics and plastic bags. Well, now imagine the size of a football field, a soccer field, and cover that with plastic bags. Well, that's synthetic turf. That's a synthetic turf field, but it's much more worse than that. So synthetic turf is blades of grass which are made of plastic. And then you also have the infill, which is these little microscopic parts. And the number one infill is ground up tires. Literally, the tires off your car, they grind them up and they put them on a field where kids play and they get in your mouth and everything. So all the dirt, all the debris, all the toxins that are in a tire are on that playing field. And then every time it rains, think about all the rains we just had, all that microplastic gets washed into our oceans. And those microplastic sources are incredibly toxic, and it gets into our oceans. And particularly in the grass itself, the grass blades, they contain PFAS, or you've also heard them called PFAs. The EPA just released their guidance for their new water regulation, where they're looking at their standard is 4 parts per trillion of PFAs in drinking water. Now, the industry has stated they cannot make plastic grass without using PFAS. So every time you're installing a synthetic turf field, that's an entire football field or soccer field of PFAS. And every time it rains, that's all going to get into our drinking water. It's all going to get into our ocean. And there's a lot more other toxins than that. PFAS especially is incredibly toxic. Philadelphia Inquirer just came out with an article called Field of Dread, where they linked PFAS in synthetic turf to brain cancer in Philly players. So there is a lot of evidence that this stuff is incredibly, incredibly toxic. And we definitely ask the city council to take action to, like I said, one, from a city standpoint, don't install it. And then from a board standpoint, also do a moratorium, develop regulations to halt an installation. There is a number of bills right now in the California House and Senate to stop the installation from a state standpoint of synthetic turf, and we definitely ask you guys as environmental leaders to do that in the city as well, because like I said, it is incredibly toxic stuff. Thank you.
Next speaker is Yesenia Hernandez, followed by Vanessa Forsythe.
Hi, I'm Yesenia. I'm here with Clean Earth for Kids, and I'm here to talk about synthetic turf and wood smoke. I'm an environmental systems major at UCSD, and I really care about all this, but my partner, he actually, it does not know anything about the environment. But when I told him we were coming to Encinitas, he said, oh, Encinitas is so clean, so beautiful. And when I told him about everything that they're doing, they still use pesticides that are banned, he was shocked. He was like, no, but Encinitas is they care about how they look, they care about the environment, they care about all this. And I told him, I know, but they still use it. They haven't found an alternative yet. And so I just want to let you guys know, Encinitas is well known for being beautiful, for caring about people. And my partner, who doesn't know anything about the environment, he knows that you guys care. And so I'm just here to let you guys know, you guys are well known for being beautiful. And so I think we should be beautiful and health conscious, environmental conscious. And there's a way to do it. And so I just want to bring awareness to that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vanessa Forsythe, and I'm also with Clean Earth for Kids. In terms of the synthetic turf, there's many reasons why it's not okay, some of which have already been mentioned. There's also more injuries to soccer and football players have indicated that it's a serious, they see more events of lower body injuries. And some of them have spoken out and insisted, some of the professional soccer and football players are saying they don't want to play on AstroTurf. The other thing is that you do need chemicals to treat that synthetic turf. And when it's hot out, it gets very, very hot. And that is also a problem for children and youth playing on the fields, as well as the toxic substances that have to be removed in 10 to 20 years when we can no longer use the synthetic turf. Better alternative is, even if it isn't always green, sometimes weeds, sometimes clover, is grass and dirt fields for our kids to play, and more trees, of course. The other thing I want to mention is we came earlier and spoke to the Environmental Commission regarding the use of pesticides, particularly glyphosate. As mentioned, the 5 chemicals that we're concerned about in terms of pesticide applications. There is alternatives to that, and we really hope that the City Council and the staff will take action to prohibit using that in any applications by the city. Thank you for your time.
Mayor, that does conclude oral communications.
Okay, thank you to all who spoke. We did not have a closed session today, and City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
No changes to the posted agenda. And then moving to the consent calendar, item 8E has been removed from a member of the public, but they did not need a staff report.
8?
E.
E as in echo?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that means items 8A through 8D as in dog are, I will consider a motion for.
I'll move to approve.
I wanted to pull D as in dog.
As in dog, okay, so 8A,
I have some
B, and
questions.
C are being considered on the consent.
I'll second the motion for the balance.
Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 8D.
8D as in dog.
And I think we can dispense with the staff report.
I'm happy to do that, it's up to you.
A few questions. I mean, there's a lot of information there. It's all good information. So, when you guys are, first question was on page 3, we were talking about ADUs and having 122 new ADUs, I think, produced in 2022. I was wondering, do we have any idea of how many of those will qualify for lower income?
Give me a moment, and we can look it up on the tables.
Okay.
So for very low and low income for ADU development in 2022, we had about 14.
Okay. And what was that based on, what, a survey we did at the time of entitlement, or did we come through and do something after the fact?
So we have a part of the application process for a building permit. The applicants are required to fill out what we call the H form, and they put the address, the income that they intend to rent the ADU at, and some additional information for us.
Okay, good, okay. And then also on page 3, there was the section talking about the homeless outreach program for empowerment, and a lot of good numbers there. I'm just trying to, this is as much a question of helping me understand. 273 individuals experiencing homeless enrolled, and there were 77 housed, 10 reunited, and it went on, and I was trying to understand, how many remaining that were not addressed or not housed in some way, shape, or form? Because I think some of these numbers may count number of people serviced, didn't necessarily get them out of homelessness. And so my first question is, out of the 273, do we know how many that either are still homeless or may have reverted back to homeless? Do we have any idea?
So we did the annual point in time count. I want to say that took place in January, and we won't find out those numbers until the next couple of months. And then we'll probably report to the council at that point on what our homelessness numbers were from that time.
Okay, and then maybe that's, what I would be looking for is, when we come back to these numbers, is show what the net result, what the progress was, because we had everything from successfully placed in temporary shelter. I didn't know whether that was counted in the people who were, the 77 that were successfully housed, or the 10 that you were reunited. Were they, I'm just trying to figure out what the bottom line is. I'd like to see real clean, I'm an engineer. I want to see tabular type numbers and see the results at the end. So don't have to have the answer tonight, but when we come back to talk about the point in time numbers, that's the kind of numbers I'm looking for.
And if I could, Councilmember Ehlers, we do plan to bring forward an update for our homeless action plan, and it could be at that point that we can provide that data that you're looking for.
Okay, great. And I'll skip all the no net loss questions because I think we're doing that. Is that next week? So we'll be back here to talk about no net loss, and I'll have all those same questions, and I may refer back to this report at that time. So on this is getting in there, and again, a lot of information, and I really appreciate it. On page 152, talking about the status of relief from Prop A, it made a comment about one place it said we had to update our housing element for April of 2025. That's when we would do it. But then in another page, very, very near there, it says that we no longer need to update in April 2025. And I suspect something changed. What changed, and what is the current requirement?
So at the time the housing element was being prepared and adopted, we were under the impression that it was going to be a 4-year planning cycle rather than the 8-year planning cycle. So a lot of the timelines in the housing element are related to that assumption that it was 4 years. We also got interpretation for technical assistance from HCD that confirmed we were not subject to that 4-year period for the 6th cycle.
Oh, wow, that's new news. And it was because we were out of compliance. And as I recall, we had to go through 2 cycles of 4 years before we could get back into an 8-year. So did we get a get out of jail free card or something?
Yeah, I understand that the government code section was updated for referencing the 6th cycle adoption. If we don't get that adopted, then it goes into the 4-year cycle.
Okay, cool. So that would put it out at 29 for our next mandatory update? I see Roy nodding yes, so that's...
That is correct.
Okay. And then, well, I think that's really, the rest are all no net loss, and we'll talk about them next week. So with that, I'll move approval.
And I will second it. I will second it, and I have a couple of questions on some of the tables with the progress. I was a little confused by, for example, on page 22 of the report, the housing application summary, number of proposed units in all applications received, 869, and total housing units approved, 214. You know, we last year, it seems to me that just, you know, there were many more approved than is in this table. So I'm not sure whether that was because they were approved under the 5th cycle and not the 6th, or what causes the discrepancy in numbers?
For the housing application summary, those are the projects that we deem complete as meaning going through the plan check process, and then they get cleared to go through their hearing process. So we do have more applications that are in process that weren't necessarily captured in the 2022 because they had not been deemed complete yet. For example, some of our housing element sites, they're ready to go, getting closer to go to hearing, and so once those do get approved, then those numbers will end up showing up.
Yeah, and I my calendar may be off, but it seems to me that Sunshine Gardens, Vulcan, and even Fox Point Farms would have been within this period.
Those showed up for this specific section in the table in 2021's report.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering, is if they were in another report. So this is just what we've got going on since then. And the other question, page 24, we've got some details about deed restrictions. We see, we've got 102 that were deed restricted at low, above moderate, 491, and I think this is our challenge in a nutshell, is that we are quite capable of constructing housing that's above moderate income level for purchase or rent, but we have definitely a challenge with the low and very low. So we'll keep on working at it, and still looking forward to that circulation element. I also would like to point out that in the late 2000s, there was an effort to update the general plan, which included an update of the housing element, which became very controversial. And so we ended up, as a council, deciding that instead of trying to tackle the whole thing, we would just take the housing element. And so now we're kind of piecemealing the general plan update, and I don't know if the planning department's going to make recommendations for when we might update our general plan so that we can kind of catch everything up to date. I think the general plan is a critical document, and I'm not suggesting it should have wholesale modifications, but the public health element, for example, that was proposed as part of the update back in the 2000s might be something that we could use to kind of guide the council on issues related to public health. There are other things. Our circulation element, I'm desperate to see that and get that up to date. So I appreciate the work that went into this report. It's quite a gold mine of info, and I look forward to continuing the work that's necessary. So we'll vote now.
Motion carries unanimously. That takes us to item 8E, and the speaker is Michael von Neumann.
Good evening. Michael von Neumann, East Encinitas, New Encinitas, whatever. But I'm here to discuss or make comments on consent calendar 8E. I completely support approving this item that calls for working with Carlsbad for restriping La Costa Avenue and part of Livenhain Road. La Casa Avenue, east of I-5 to El Camino Real, is one scary road to ride a bike on. It has 2 lanes, 55 miles an hour, and a very narrow, unbuffered bike lane. The fact that Carlsbad is restriping the road to have 10-foot travel lanes on both sides and adding a buffer to the bike lane shows that they're very serious about making our roads safer for all of our all road users. I'm heartened to see Encinitas and Carlsbad work together because there's some common right-of-way, I guess, along this road. I like the idea that they're working together to improve safety. Since the Encinitas staff agree with the potential benefits of the La Costa restriping down to 10-foot lanes, perhaps the restriping plans currently underway for Manchester Avenue that show 10.5-foot wide lanes and 11-foot wide lanes could be looked at again, because if it's good enough for Carlsbad, it should be good enough for Encinitas. Both Manchester Avenue and La Casa are truck routes, and if Carlsbad is saying that a 10-foot wide bike lane is okay for a truck route, then it should be okay for Encinitas as well. So I do thank you, the city, for making our, keep working toward making our streets safer for all users. And I look forward to the day where I don't take my life into my hands if I want to ride on La Casa Avenue. Thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, the 10-foot, my only concern about the 10-foot was whether or not fire would it support it. So I believe staff checked with Chief Gordon, and he said, yeah, he's supportive of the 10-foot. One of the questions I'll keep asking as we do these narrower lanes is what is the minimum? Would we go below 10 foot? And I'm looking for data, data-driven decision that would support, is 10 foot the minimum, is 9.5, is 9? There's some limit at which I actually have had constituents complain about even older than I am, that have complained that it's getting difficult to drive with the narrower lanes, and it's a demographic that I think needs to be represented. I'm supportive of 10 foot based on staff and the fire chief's support of 10 feet. So that was my only issue here. With that, I'll move approval of 8E.
Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Yes, thank you. I'm supportive of the 10-foot too, and appreciate that it's being introduced here on La Costa. And I'm glad to hear that it's received the fire chief's approval. But I'd like to know from our city engineer or our traffic engineer, under what other circumstances can we look at that 10-foot width in other places?
So I need to jump in here. We were just notified that Carlsbad has issued, they're advertising this project now, and they've issued an addendum that changes the lanes. So they are different plans than what we have brought forward. They issued an addendum today, and they're creating 11-foot lanes on La Costa, and then the same 10.5-foot lanes on Alevenhain, our portion.
So are you saying that this item that we're considering right now is obsolete?
I'm saying the plans that were attached are now obsolete. And again, my apologies, Carlsbad did not tell us this. This was news to us. So I would defer to maybe Tarquin as to whether you could approve 11-foot lanes on La Costa with the design immunity. I suspect not. I suspect we'd probably have to bring back plan set again.
Well, I would ask, I mean, when you look at the cities right away, it fairly quickly diminishes. There's just a fairly short distance that this is even city, to be considered by the city.
May I ask for clarification? Did they explain why the change?
No, they didn't. They didn't reach out to us. We looked on Planet Bids and noticed the change. I think maybe they didn't understand the timing of when we were bringing it forward. Although we told them we were bringing it forward, they probably didn't realize that this was the day that we were bringing it forward, is my guess. But they do have 10.5, 11-foot lanes on many of their other corridors, like Tamarack. They always had the wider lanes there where they have the heavier truck traffic.
So I'd like to withdraw my motion.
I think it's significantly changed.
Yeah, you're withdrawing, and we're done.
Okay. I was
May I ask a
going to make a
question?
motion to continue, but also with the action of having staff talk to Carlsbad, find out what drove the change, and come back with an explanation and any updated plans if we indeed want to move forward with approving the new plans in the future.
I don't think you need to table this. I think we just withdraw it. And Mayor, you don't need to ask me, but I will call the Carlsbad city manager and ask why there wasn't a courtesy call to us.
Well, I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about what drove the difference. Why did they choose 10.5 and 11? I'd like to hear their technical explanation that something drove that change.
Yeah, so I think that she's saying that she's going to bring that info back.
Yeah, good.
Yep. And I'd also like to have some detail on how it is, when you look at the right-of-way that belongs to the city of Encinitas, how it becomes a $220,000 bill. It just doesn't seem like there's very much roadway there that belongs to us. So, a good itemization. Very few people know that we don't own La Costa Avenue east of the freeway. In fact, Piraeus, where Piraeus terminates at La Costa Avenue, is in Carlsbad. So I appreciate city staff keeping an eye on this because I think it's important that we have some commonality in the facilities that we create, especially for bicyclists. So thank you for that. But given their change of their plans, we will bring it back later. Thank you.
Mayor, may I ask one question? Over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Councilmember Izzi.
Yeah, so was that change in the width of the travel lane the most substantive change that you reviewed when you saw that the plans were reissued?
We were only looking for the impacts to us, so that was what jumped right out at us.
Mayor, so clarification on the action, is it being withdrawn from the agenda or just no action taken?
I'll defer to the city attorney on what language we should be using. I think we're just, it's being removed.
It's being removed. It will come back on staff's initiation, and no action will be taken tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for the false start there. We will go now to the action items on our agenda. We will start with item 10A, which is a public hearing to consider funding requests for FY 2023-24 Community Development Block Grant Program. And we're going to hear from Management Analyst Schubert.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and members of the public. It's my pleasure to bring this item before you tonight to consider funding recommendations for fiscal year 23-24 Community Development Block Grant activities, otherwise known as the CDBG program. The city is an entitlement community, has been receiving annual funding from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD for short, since 1990. Each year, the City Council approves funding for the CDBG projects and activities. The projects must be considered eligible under the CDBG program and must meet a local objective. To be eligible for funding, all programs and activities must meet one of 3 national objectives, be an eligible use of funds, and meet a city priority as identified in the city's 5-year consolidated plan approved by City Council in April of 2020. The fiscal year 23-24 CDBG entitlement award for the City of Encinitas is $313,340. Funds are typically dispersed into 3 categories. First, public services are programs that directly assist specific populations. It is important to note that the funding cap for public services is 15% of the total annual grant, which equals $47,000. Second, planning and administration, which includes fair housing services, is limited to 20% of the annual grant, which equals $6,668. Lastly, other, which includes facility improvement, public infrastructure, or residential rehabilitation. There's no funding cap for this category. As a part of the annual CDBG funding process, staff issued a request for proposals in January of 2023. Current and previous subrecipients were notified. An advertisement was placed in the Coast News, was posted at City Hall and on the city's website. The RFP noticed the availability of funds and the opportunity to submit responses for eligible programs and activities. 3 public service requests were received for a total of $60,000. 2 requests were received for planning and administrative activities for a total of $62,668. $203,672 was requested for public infrastructure and residential rehabilitation. For the public service category, it is recommended that the Community Resource Center receive $22,127.52 for a homeless intervention and prevention program. It is recommended that Meals on Wheels receive $7,588.18 for a meal delivery service for seniors. It is recommended that the Interfaith Community Services receive $17,284.30 for the rotational winter shelter program. The methodology of funding to all the eligible public service activities has been the past practice for the city for many years. The allocation methodology is to sustain level funding from 2022-23 plus a proration of available funds over the recommended applicants. Because the fiscal year 2023-24 grant is less than fiscal year 2022-23, adjustments have been made to reflect a proration over all the approved public service activities at 15% of grant funding to comply with the CDBG program funding limits. For the planning and administrative category, it is recommended that development services receive $42,668 for program administration, and that Legal Aid Society San Diego receive $20,000 for fair housing services. It is recommended that the engineering department receive $103,672 for ADA improvements, and development services department receive $100,000 for the residential rehabilitation program. To conclude, staff recommends that the City Council authorize funding of fiscal year 2023-24 CDBG activities as shown in Attachment 1 for incorporation in the draft fiscal year 2023-24 Annual Action Plan, and continue the public hearing to April 26, 2023 for approval of the fiscal year 2023-24 CDBG budget and Annual Action Plan. This concludes the presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Okay, so this is a public hearing, and there are procedures for public hearings. We just heard the staff report, and we're going to now do disclosures, and that would be disclosure of any other information you have received that is not included in the staff report. There will be a round of preliminary questions. I will open the public hearing and hear from any members of the public wanting to speak on this subject. And then I will close the public hearing, and the council will have deliberation and possible action. So with that, Councilmember Blackwell, if you could make any disclosures.
I have none.
I do, and I'm not sure I asked questions of staff, and staff responded via email. One of the questions was, how did we advertise the rehabilitation in the last fiscal year? And I think it was primarily through word of mouth and through the website. In the report we just got, that we talked about earlier, 8D, it talked about, I think going forward in the future plans, that we would advertise, I'm looking for the rehabilitation, that we would advertise, and I'll quote from page 161, annually promote the program at the beginning of each fiscal year through the Senior Center, HOAs, Next Door, and other organizations and media as applicable. So I think that would be admirable, and that would be a good addition. And I'm trying to think, there was one other email you sent to me, and I'm trying to remember what was in it.
Yeah, you asked how many people were on the waiting list.
That was it, okay. And so there were 4 applicants last year, and my question was, is that all the applicants or only the applicants that qualified? And that was the only applicants, and they all qualified. I also asked what was considered lower income, and was it the same as our lower income on the, using the standard SANDAG or state AMI matrix for lower income? It's not. It's a HUD, federal HUD matrix, similar in nature, but slightly different numbers. So I think that discloses everything that was in Germain. So
I have nothing to disclose.
I just will disclose that I received an email, but also the rest of City Council did, from John Van Cleef, who's the Chief Executive Officer for Community Resource Center. I'm not sure I saw that in the public comment, but I'm disclosing it now.
Okay. I have nothing to disclose. So are there any preliminary questions? Seeing none. Okay, Councilmember Hensy.
I had one question about the Legal Aid Society of San Diego. So during the pandemic, there were a lot of calls we received, and it was from a whole variety of income levels. So I'm curious to know about what they're going to say to an Encinitas resident who calls them and might not be a designated low-income person. Are they saying, sorry, we can't help you? Or are they saying, here's an avenue that you could pursue, or here, here's a little bit of literature that you can read about the law? So I'd be curious to know, it looks like they help 20 households. That's about how much they're saying they will help. When they get to that number, are they like, we're not gonna help you anymore?
I'll start with that last question. When they get to 20, they've reached their stated goal, but that's not the end of the help that they'll give. We hold them to 20 Encinitas residents, but they don't stop there.
And so, but the first part of that question, folks who are maybe not qualified, low income, can they still receive advice?
They can receive advice. There's lots of information on the website, lots of FAQs. There's also workshops that are monthly that Legal Aid Society puts on their webinars. You can ask questions there. They're interactive. You can speak with somebody. As far as your case being taken, then that would depend on your income.
So how are we internally assessing that this is the right use for what we're trying to do, which is keep people housed, make sure there aren't violations? I know we legally need to do some of these check-ins to make sure that there isn't discrimination in the housing, and so this probably satisfies that requirement. But I just want to make sure that we feel that internally it's an effective program for us to invest in.
I do feel that way. I don't know that feel is the right question. I've seen evidence that they provide data every 3 months of phone calls they've received, things they've tracked down. They do testing, fair housing testing, to see what's happening in different areas, different apartment complexes. At this point, this year, they haven't come across any fair housing issues. And that's what we're looking for. So I feel that they've done their job, and based on the data and the results we see, I feel that they're providing the fair housing services that we're looking for.
Okay. Thank you. With that, we will hear from the public, and I will open the public hearing.
We do have 2 speakers, John Van Cleef, followed by Elena Thompson.
I sent a graphic to the city, Mayor Kranz, members of City Council. My name is John Van Cleef. I'm the CEO of Community Support Resource Center, and I support the approval of Agenda Item 10A. The trends we're seeing at CRC, depicted in the graph presented on screen, hopefully, demonstrate that demands for our core services have increased year over year, and demonstrate an increase in demand for services certainly over the last 4 years. The one exception you would note is a decrease in visits to our Food and Nutrition Center between 2020 and 2021, and that was a result of an abundance of relief programs that the government was providing for food. However, between 21 and 22, we saw an increase of visits to the Food and Nutrition Center that exceed pre-pandemic food and nutrition levels. And certainly since the federal aid has stopped in recent months, we're seeing a regular increase in uptick in visits to our Food and Nutrition Center. So all of our trends point toward increased demand over 2023. The increase in CRC's funding request is directly correlated to the increase in supportive visits that we're providing through the Food and Nutrition Center and our other services. We surpassed the 2022 goal of 4,000 visits, and we have established a goal for 2023 of 5,500 visits by at least 515 Encinitas residents. Historically, CRC has met or exceeded goals from previous CDBG grant funds. Beyond the visits to the Food and Nutrition Center, Encinitas community members also receive and have access to CRC's full menu of supportive service, things that include financial literacy, work development, preparation, shelter, and case management. Last year, we received a grant award for CDBG of $22,821, and the city funded the balance of our request of $25,000 from the general fund. This year, with the increases we're seeing, we requested $30,000 from CDBG. Staff report recommends $22,127, and in addition to the support of the CDBG proposal, I'm asking the City Council once again to fill the gap toward the $30,000 with $7,873 from the City General Fund. A penny of homelessness prevention is worth a pound of homelessness cure. Thank you very much.
Can I ask you a question? The sheltering that you do at CRC is for domestic violence, is that correct?
We do sheltering for domestic violence survivors, and we also are engaged in the case management of the Interfaith Shelter Network, so we're directly related there as well.
And the Interfaith Shelter Network is in various cities in North County, or?
It's all over San Diego County, and it works with different faith communities for the placement of our unsheltered neighbors in winter shelter. Typically, it's in churches on a rotational basis for 2 weeks. We coordinate the case management for coastal North County.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Elena Thompson, followed by Danielle Taylor.
I might have had a slide, if you could pull it up. But hi, everyone. Happy New Year. I haven't seen you all in a while, so thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to encourage you to take a pause on 10A. I think that, as the mayor stated, you don't want to do things piecemeal, such as in the general plan. And to me, this is a little confusing because you have an umbrella called housing and homelessness, or under the housing services manager, they're handling housing and homelessness. And so there's a whole lot in this when we look at the grants being requested. And I don't think anyone's against the grants being requested, but it seems piecemeal to me. And I also wonder if the past practice of going with these CDBG grants really makes sense for the city, largely because this money is Department of Housing money from the federal government, and it's for communities with slums or to prevent slums. And I feel like Encinitas might be stealing this money from more deserving communities. So, plus there's a lot of administrative costs. So I think that this merits, I would just encourage you to look at this under the Homeless Action Plan and wait until you have the homeless numbers from the point in time count and make some holistic decisions that also include full accountability for how the money is being used, how it has been used, and fold that into the overall city budget for housing and homelessness. If the city's goal is to truly decrease the number of people experiencing homelessness in Encinitas, and I think that's everyone's, I don't know that expanding programs is necessarily the best way to do that. And I'm not the expert, but I think it merits a discussion and perhaps some more community meetings and citizen involvement in this until, again, you have the numbers, you have your budget final, and we can get this right for a winning solution that really adds up to meaningful results for the homeless. And there was an interesting quote from the mayor of El Cajon, and I believe I sent this article to you all, but he said that the truth is California is unique in the nation in that it's crafted a network of laws and policies that are so permissive they actually encourage homelessness. Meanwhile, generous social benefits enable a lifestyle of addiction, as well as ill-conceived laws discourage or prevent most standard enforcement techniques. cities have had to, historically, to mitigate against the practice of living on the streets. The result is that people from all over the country and the world actually come here, he meant El Cajon, but San Diego, to be homeless. So let's get this right, and the citizens want to help you, and thank you for the opportunity to be part of the conversation.
That concludes speakers. Oh, no, we have another speaker.
Good evening. My name is Danielle Tallier, and I'm the Senior Attorney and Program Manager at Legal Aid Society of San Diego for our Fair Housing Services. And I just wanted to start by answering your question, Council Member, about low-income clients and is there an income maximum and what kind of happens there. I did want to clarify that for Fair Housing Services, we have no income maximum. So it could be anyone at any income level, and we can still provide a wide range of services to them, so that doesn't make a difference for our services. But I wanted to thank you for considering our proposal to continue our fair housing work for the city of Encinitas. We will continue to provide education to housing consumers and housing providers of the rights and obligations under fair housing laws. In addition, we will investigate allegations of discrimination and will assist in the enforcement of the Fair Housing Act for meritorious fair housing violations. Legal Aid will continue to work with community stakeholders, nonprofits, and local agencies to provide fair housing education and be available for referrals. We will also provide assistance to the City of Encinitas and will hold seminars and trainings and webinars on fair housing laws and current events as directed by the city. Thank you.
Next speaker is Vanessa Forsyth, followed by Suzanne Hume.
I just wanted to address regarding the Community Resource Center and the interfaith shelter. Our church currently has, I think, 9 to 10 individuals who have been vetted by the Community Resource Center and are getting shelter at our church for a period of 2 weeks. And that was referenced by this gentleman. I think that it's really important to understand that this program is essential to people, that the emphasis is on finding, placing them in homes or finding them a place where they can remain rather than just stay in the shelter. They also have to meet responsibilities in terms of training for finance management, as well as working out the details for job applications. So sometimes we use the words that we shouldn't give handouts, but we should give hand-ups. Again, we've been doing this shelter at our church, which is Christ Presbyterian Church, but there's quite a number of churches up and down, not just North County, but San Diego, that have been doing it, and we've been doing it for more than 10 years, and we work closely with the CRC and interfaith staff. So I wanted to really encourage you to continue because the need is so great. It includes families, too, that we have with us. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Suzanne Hume. I'm the Educational Director and founder of Clean Earth for Kids. As a former teacher, I have a lot of experience with interfaith. They're amazing. And what good work they have done for our county for decades. Our board member, Yusuf Miller, who's actually been shouted out by the United Nations and is there now, has also worked very closely with Interfaith for a very long time. We are giving our support to this agenda item and also our full support to Interfaith for the excellent work that they have done for so long. So I just wanted to make sure that that is noted in the record, and thank you to Legal Aid as well. Thank you.
Mayor, that does conclude speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we will close the public hearing and call on council members to discuss this item? Councilmember Hensy.
Thank you. I would like to say thanks for being here tonight and answering those questions. And your number I've saved because so many people have asked me for rental resources, and just being sure that they're going to be able to be directed to the right place is very reassuring. I would like to say that I'm interested in closing the gap for the Community Resource Center in the request that they've amounted tonight. Compared to the hundreds of thousands of dollars we've been talking about in our first meeting of the day, $7,000 and some change seems like a very worthy cause. Mayor Krantz and I have had the pleasure of visiting the interfaith pop-up shelters and gotten to speak with the people who are finding shelter there in a time that otherwise they might be in their car or on our streets. And these folks usually have full-time jobs and they're not making enough money to live in our city or pay for gas to get from a distance out of our city. As I mentioned in the earlier meeting tonight, I learned in the Sandag retreat that the average employee wage of employees in Encinitas is just over $40,000 a year. So while we have high resident income levels, those who are doing the jobs in our community are not. They're in the very low income bracket. So I'm supportive of this request, and that's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the input on this public hearing. It's always good to hear everyone's thoughts. On that topic, we do have a homeless action plan that we've approved and has been in place, and we're working our plan. And I'm a big advocate for all the public comment that came forward to create that plan, all the community time invested in creating that plan. And I think it's a good plan that we're making actionable. We also now have a homeless solutions manager who's full-time on helping us with the right solutions and implementing our HAP, our homeless action plan. I think we're getting all the right pieces in place to continue to move forward with the various and broad numbers of tools out there for us to really make a difference with assisting people who are homeless or unhoused. So I instead of going back to rethink, well, is this the right thing at this juncture, I want to move forward with decisions we've already made and implement the plan as we have it. And I think that's a smart way to go. I think as we move through and we assess the value of each of the programs we're investing in, it's always good to reflect and to just make sure the programs we choose to invest in and the money we choose to bring to our community to help us invest in these solutions is being the best spent. So I think we should always interrogate that question. And but with the information I have at this point, when I see the value that, I'm just going to call out Community Resource Center, but it's true for all of these programs, where the Chief Executive Director reports that 515 families as Encinitas residents have been served by your CRC and your services. With the funding from this source and with our addition of general fund money, man, to me, that's a smart investment of our city resources, of the CDBG resources, into a big value for people who are Encinitas residents. So I want to boil it down to that. I think that we've demonstrated, it has been demonstrated by our partners who are helping us address solutions for homelessness, that this is a very valuable program. And so I would also feel very comfortable not only approving the recommendation, but filling the gap, adding the gap with additional city general fund resources, which to me is a very, very small amount of money to achieve really good, tangible results. Thank you.
Councilmember Blackwell.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I agree with what you just heard from Councilmember Hensay and Deputy Mayor Lyons. It was really helpful to hear from the speakers from the organizations requesting funds and hearing some of the data and how the money is being deployed. One of the things that we got in some public comments ahead of today was reference to what Carlsbad is doing. So I have a curiosity question for staff of just, the reference was that they have a different way of assessing the outcomes of the programs. And I didn't know if you'd looked at that and compared it and have any reflections on that, if there's opportunity for us to consider anything different. And it's not that I'm insisting it, I'm just asking.
I can certainly research that for you. We'll be back April 26th. The management analyst there was the management analyst here. So she's always readily available to give information to us to share. I do know that she created the program here the way it is, and she is also working on the program there and making changes. So I'll touch base with her and put our heads together and see what they're doing.
That'd be great, thank you.
Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to go over, somebody from the audience mentioned about CDBG grants being for blighted communities, but I don't believe that's actually the case. It's broader than that, and I think the allocation of funds to individual cities is programmatic in nature in that it's basically given out, and the original intent, when I looked back, because I was curious where did it come from, it was under not Governor Ford, President Ford, Republican even, and it was to put the money, the allocation of the money down at the city level where it's closest to the problems, and it was to fight poverty and blight if you had it. So I think we're using it the correct way. Did I say anything wrong in all that?
No, you're certainly correct. And prevention and elimination of slum and blight is one of the national objectives. We focus on benefiting low-income individuals and neighborhoods. And we do, we look to our Section 8 program as an example. And at this point in time, we have, for housing vouchers, a waiting list of over 10 years.
Oh,
so
wow.
we know the need is in our community. So we are deemed acceptable to that national objective to benefit low-income individuals.
Okay, and Section 8 is yet another funding source, correct?
It's a completely different program.
So
Yeah.
we're
We just
talking
look
only
at the
about
examples.
one funding source that we're allocating, and I actually like the fact that the council in the city is getting to choose where it goes. And as far as the way it's been allocated, I support the recommendation. I support the $7,000 addition from the general fund. I think that's all well and good, and I would move forward with it. So.
Well, one of the questions that I have relates to the administrative cost. How is it that we come up with that number? And what does that cover? City of Encinitas administration.
It does cover the administration of the program. It's very time-consuming to monitor the grant. We monitor all the results, the invoicing. We are allowed to take 20% of the actual grant that we receive for program administration. We also lump fair housing services into that category, so we can make better use of the 15% public service money.
So I guess this is more a question for the city manager. If that's an overhead cost that we are using the block grant to essentially cover some of that overhead, is that correct?
That is correct.
And if we didn't recover all of the overhead and made these programs match their requests, that's $13,000, so that would lower the administrative reimbursement to the city coffers of 42,668 would go down to, do the math for me, 29,668. Would that be a significant impact on?
I was told there would be no math.
No math, yes, right.
So I, as the staff knows, I'm not the best at air math, but I think what you're asking is, would it be better to lower the administrative portion from the CDBG funds to make the things whole versus putting it from the general fund, either way, it's an impact to the general fund.
Yes.
So I would defer to the director. Is the $7,000 or $10,000 really going to make a difference if you don't get that in your
Will we
administrative
pay our
fees?
employees less if we did that or
Are you
anything?
even allowed to do that?
Oh, we're not
So,
allowed to do that.
Yeah, if I could. So there is a maximum allowance allocation towards services. So we can, it's limited to 47. However, last year, the city council directed staff to subsidize the rest of the services. So we do have funding available if the council wished to direct staff to fully fund all of the service providers' requests. We can accommodate that through our operation budget. So.
Well, for me, I just happen to have a timely opportunity to do a ride-along with Meals on Wheels, and I can tell you the impact of those deliveries is significant.
Yeah, and I'm glad the council brought it up. As I mentioned, the city council last year directed staff to fully fund all of the service providers. Given that there's a new council, we wanted the council here to direct us, to give us that direction, but we are fully supportive of fully funding the service providers.
Well, by
we do have
golly,
the
I think we
funding
ought to give that direction.
to do that.
So did somebody make a motion? Or okay, well, I would move funding is recommended with additional supplement of the $13,000 to make these request differences there.
And I'll second.
And then just a clarification also to continue the public hearing.
To continue the public hearing to the next time, or?
April 26th.
Okay, yes, and that too. And Deputy Mayor Lyons.
I only rose my hand to speak to second your motion.
Okay, Councilmember Ehlers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No more speaking? So we have a motion and a second. Let's vote. Okay, thank you. And thank to all the public speakers who came and shared their thoughts. And with that, we will move on to item 10B, which is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the Transnet Local Street Improvement Program and projects to reduce future Transnet programming for FY '23 through '27 in the amount of $120,400. And it's Lois. Yum, thank you. Good to see you.
The item before you tonight is the amendment to the Transnet Local Street Improvement Program of Projects, otherwise known as the LSIP, to reduce future Transnet programming from FY 2023 to FY 2027 in a total amount of $120,400. The actions recommended are to conduct a public hearing related to the proposed changes to the city's Transnet projects and to adopt City Council Resolution Number 2023-23. The Regional Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as RTIP, is a 5-year investment plan that identifies highway, arterial, transit, and bikeway projects and programs the San Diego region proposes to fund with Transnet. Transnet is a 40-year half-cent sales tax transportation funding measure that provides funding for major transportation projects. Agencies provide their LSIP to receive Transnet funding for these projects. The programming in the RTIP lists the maximum amount that a city can draw to fund a project with Transnet funds for a project listed in the agency's LSIP. Our City Council approved our Transnet LSIP in June 2022 for the 2023 RTIP, which covers a span of 5 years, FY 2023 through FY 2027. The SANDAG Board adopted the 2023 RTIP on September 23, 2022. SANDAG provides annual estimates for Transnet funds for the upcoming fiscal year, as well as a projection for the next 4 fiscal years to allow agencies to plan for capital projects and determine operating subsidies. On February 24th, 2023, the SANDAG Board of Directors approved the updated FY 2024 to FY 2028 estimates and apportionments. With this revision, the city's maximum amount of Transnet funding that we can program has decreased in the RTIP, and we must update our projects programming and our LSIP to reflect the changes. SANDAG requires each local agency to hold a public hearing on the proposed list of projects before any updates to the RTIP. SANDAG also requires a resolution to be approved by the City Council for each amendment or update to the RTIP. That being said, the following are the proposed changes to the city's LSIP. In FY 22 to 23, the revenue projections stayed the same and no changes are being made. In FY 23 to 24, Transnet programmed amount has decreased to $2,105,000. In FY 24 to 25, Transnet programmed amount has decreased to $2.5 million. In FY 25 to 26, Transnet programmed amount has decreased to $2,577,000. And finally, in FY 2026 to 27, Transnet program amount has decreased to $2,650,000. The actions recommended once again are to conduct a public hearing related to the proposed changes to the city's Transnet projects and to adopt City Council Resolution number 2023-23. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have on this item. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And as we did in the last item, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to ask you to disclose any other information you may receive that's not included in the staff report. I'm going to give you time for preliminary questions. I will then open the public hearing, and then I will close the public hearing, and we will have council discussion and action. So with that, Councilmember Blackwell.
Nothing to disclose.
Nothing to disclose.
Nothing to disclose?
Nothing to disclose.
And I have nothing to disclose. So are there any preliminary questions? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
We will open the public hearing, and we have no public speakers.
I am opening the public hearing.
And we have no public speakers.
Does that mean I get to close the public hearing now?
Close the public hearing.
Closing the public hearing. Thank you. So now we're on to council discussion and action. I would point out that the process of speculating about what you're going to, the revenues you will receive from a penny sales tax every year throughout the county is no small task. And in my opinion, the amounts that they are adjusting these is relatively small compared to how challenging that ability to project is. Obviously, you know, there are a number of things that factor into this, and hopefully we don't experience another recession because that is one of the things that has had the most significant impact on Transnet. And that is indeed very difficult, and I appreciate them providing this information so that we can budget correctly. With that, Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Yes, I do have a question for staff, and it has to do with how to read the staff report in front of us. First of all, I just want to say these Transnet funds are just so important to us. I think they're amazing, and I just think we're so lucky to be able to have them. So even though our 2023-24 proposed amount here is $2,105,000, and it's less than it was, I'm happy to get it. So I'm just want to start by saying that. But could you help me then in the table 1 that's attached, and I don't know if you have the opportunity to just bring up any one of the projects and help me understand how the money that will come to our city translates into one of these charts. So the first, it's ENC 14A is street overlay program, and then we've got our Safe Routes to School sidewalk program. We have North County Highway 101 beautification. We have traffic signal modification and so forth. Santa Fe Drive ATP corridor improvements. These are all articulated specifically. Could you just help me read how these charts are and how they relate back to the amount?
Yes, of course. So our LSIP was submitted to SANDEC last year, and it was approved by City Council last June of 2022. In that LSIP, these were the projects that we were listed that were applicable to Transnet. We had to program what we thought would happen for each year, as well as they gave us what their maximum projections were at that time. At that time, that's when we calculated for the different projects. Our annual overlay program happens every year, and that is one of the most, or the project that is heavy on Transnet. So we did supply most of our Transnet funding to the overlay program. The second most heavy program in Transnet funding will be the North Coast Highway 101 beautification, also known as the Leucadia Streetscape. So for that one, we did program 2023 to 24. We do have to amend it in the next RTIP for future funding. And the Safe Routes to School Sidewalk Program and the traffic signal modifications are two of our annual programs that we had discussed in our budget meeting earlier today. So those receive not much Transnet funding, if not any. It's just to report to SANDAG that we do have other programs available for Transnet funding if we do receive more in the future.
Oh, okay. There's three projects here in my district. Santa Fe Drive, ATP, the west portion, Birmingham and Drive, and Verde Underpass. Is there money just shown there? Is there money kind of like parked there? It sounds like that's what you're saying, in case there's available. What?
Yes, so we let them know of our other projects, and just in case they do provide future funding in the future, they would be able to allocate it to these projects.
It also keeps us eligible for grant funding. So often these grant programs require a project to be listed in the RTIP. So that's another reason why we put some of our projects in here. Even if there isn't a lot of regional funding in there, it keeps us eligible for other federal and state funds.
Oh, thank you. That's a great explanation. I appreciate that. We should always, and we do, look for grant funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ehlers.
Yeah, I'm glad you've got that chart up there. I was going to make the exact point you make up there, that the funding change on the overlay, which would include, and if there is sufficient funding for Rodney, is zero change this year. If you could also bring up the page 5, ENC 14A, which is the same, it's the complete budget out of the staff report. And it's got the numbers you show here, and it also shows our local funds, and it shows carryover. And I had some questions about it.
So our annual overlay does not have local funds. The annual overlay is funded by Transnet, SB1, and HUDA tax funds. So the L that you see there is for local street improvements.
Okay, well, if you can bring up page 5 of the report, I don't know if you can show that on the overhead. Is that possible? And that's why I'm bringing it up. I want to understand the budget, to understand what are the components.
The local funds that's mentioned over there is our HUDA and SB1 tax funds.
So so the total budget for, because my recollection was we allocated about $3 million a year budgetarily going forward for overlay program. But when I saw this page, I see 4.6, 3.9. What's the differential in there? And maybe
So if
Director
you,
Bankson.
Yeah, so if you look at our 5-year budget from the earlier meeting, you'll see like a stepped increase year over year in our funding. We used to do just $3 million a year, and then we started increasing it incrementally year by year.
Oh.
Last year it was a little bit smaller because we had pulled some of the funding from this pot to pay for some of the paving work on the 101.
Okay. So, but is the number we're looking at here on the screen now, the 4601, 4.6 million, is that our total 2022-23 overlay budget that we're looking at?
Yes, for the program.
Okay, Great. And what is the 920 LSI carryover? That looks like that's money that was allocated from a previous year that we carried over into this year from TransNet?
Yeah, so there's some exceptions to when you have or when you can use the LSI carryover, and I don't specifically know currently. They do have to explain when and how we can use them, but in the future, if we do run out of our LSI, then we can use our cash or our carryover.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, do I have any motions?
So moved.
Second.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. So we are now moving on to item 10C, which is the reintroduction of City Council Ordinance Number 2023-02, amending Encinitas Municipal Code Chapter 11.08 and repealing Chapter 11.09, establishing a citywide smoking ban in all public places. It's case number PLCY-005913-2023, and it applies to the entire city. And Crystal Nahara will be leading this, and I do want to say to my 3 colleagues who were at that meeting, it was sure nice of you to figure out a way to bring this back so I could participate in the vote.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you, Mayor and council members. I'll be brief tonight since this is a reintroduction of the ordinance. So as a reminder, the recommended action tonight is to introduce the ordinance and hold a public hearing. The goals of the ordinance before you tonight are to protect the coastal environment from hazardous and toxic plastic pollution. Examples of that related to this ordinance includes cigarette butts and vape cartridges. And then a secondary goal is to protect public health. The prior action that the mayor mentioned was held on February 15th. At that meeting, City Council unanimously approved the draft ordinance and then also directed staff to clarify in the ordinance when a residential property is considered a place of employment, and then secondly, to clarify the definition of motor vehicle that is actively being driven. As an overview, the ordinance has some prohibitions and some permissions as it relates to smoking. What is prohibited includes smoking in the following locations: in public places, places of employment, any area within 20 feet of a public place except private residential property. And then what's permitted in terms of smoking is smoking on private property, including private residential property, up to 20% of guest rooms in any hotel or motel, within a motor vehicle that is actively being driven. And then finally, the ordinance prohibits the disposal of, requires the disposal of smoking waste in a proper waste receptacle. So I'll go over the only thing that was added since the last time we met was a new definition in the code for for motor vehicle that is actively being driven. So we clarified here that that means a motor vehicle that is driving within or through the city or on a city or private street and stopping only as necessary to obey traffic regulations. But this definition does not include a vehicle that is pulled off to the side of the road, that is parked in a city or private street or parking lot, and or that is driving within a city or private parking lot. So with that addition, I'll bring you back to the recommended action tonight, which is to reintroduce the ordinance, and I'm available for questions if there are any.
Okay, and so this is not a public hearing, right?
This is a public hearing.
It is a public hearing, so that should be 10A, 10B, and 10C. It's
Yes, you're correct.
it's the
No, where does it say that? In the staff report?
triple of public hearings. So I don't need to go through. Pardon me? Trifecta, that's the word. I'm not a gambler. She is, you could tell.
You're busted.
Okay, so we just heard the staff report. We're now going to have disclosures. We're going to go through preliminary questions. We're going to open the public hearing. We're going to close the public hearing, and then we're going to have council discussion and action. So if you would please make any disclosures.
Nothing to disclose.
Nothing.
I did have a couple casual conversations with Environmental Commissioner O'Connor as well as Suzanne Hume at EcoFest.
Nothing to disclose.
And I have nothing to disclose. So with that, are there any preliminary questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, can we go to, oh, wait a minute. I'm opening the public hearing, and Madam Clerk, could we have speakers?
Yes, we do have several. Just a reminder that you do have 3 minutes. I do not see any with time donations. I'll call you 3 at a time. Trina Priest, Suzanne Hume, and then John Bodorf.
Good evening again. As you know, I am a middle school teacher and a parent of 3 teens, and I did come tonight to share and show my support for item 10C, the reintroduction of the City Council Ordinance number 2023-02 of the Encinitas Municipal Code to establish a citywide ban on smoking in public places. This action tonight will assure the maintenance, restoration, enhancement, and protection of the environment, and it aligns with Encinitas' environmental and public safety focus areas of the strategic plan. In February, the director of the Young Leaders in Healthcare High School Campus Clubs, Nancy Perry, shared her thoughts and shared the thoughts of those students there. As a reminder, the Young Leaders in Healthcare is made up of high school students who are interested in healthcare careers and in learning about public health issues. The clubs are supported by Scripps Encinitas Hospital and San Diego Alliance for Drug-Free Youth. The teens felt that, quote, approving this ban would make a positive impact in 2 areas, better public health and a cleaner environment. It is well known that cigarette smoke harms not only the smoker, it also harms those exposed to secondhand smoke, leading to higher rates of cancer, lung infections, asthma attacks, and other life-altering health problems. When people are done smoking, where do those cigarette butts end up? Too often, they are dropped on the ground. Cigarette butts and used vape cartridges make our streets look trashy and cause contamination of beaches and waterways. They contain toxic chemicals and plastic parts, which eventually break down into microplastics. These toxins and microplastics are ingested by all kinds of wildlife, including fish, birds, animals, and even humans. A cleaner Encinitas will improve the quality of life and set an excellent example for our other cities to follow. Thank you for your time.
Good evening, Mayor Crowns and City Council. Clean Earth for Kids. My name is Suzanne Hume. I'm the Educational Director and founder of Clean Earth for Kids. Sorry about that. Clean Earth for Kids stands in strong support of this ordinance. Clean air saves lives. When you go to our website, cleanearthforkids.org, Team 3, Clean Air page, you'll see a video by Dr. Paul Fowler. 81 cohort studies are, he synthesized these. There's a video, like I said, it's about 45 minutes, and it talks about why smoke, secondhand smoke, and thirdhand smoke are so toxic. As you know, obviously, toxic chemicals, heavy metals, and lead are emitted from secondhand smoke. There is no safe level of lead. Lead is a permanent neurotoxin that, like I said, permanently harms children's brains. So this is a really, really important action that we need to take to protect our children's health, their learning, and their future. And as was said, there's no safe level of lead and there's no safe level of secondhand smoke. Secondhand smoke is also comprised of PM 2.5. So PM 2.5 are tiny bits of air pollution that are breathed in through the nose and that can cross the blood-brain barrier. And this increases the risk of dementia and Alzheimer's, as well as stillbirth, pre-birth, and low birth weight babies. Speaking of stillbirth, so when you watch Dr. Fowler's presentation based on 81 cohort studies, and you look at the slide deck that's there, you'll be amazed. The increase when 2.5 pollution increases by 10 micrograms per cubic meter of air, the increase of stillbirths is 26%. This is, wow. So we absolutely need to do everything we can to protect our air from air pollution. Air pollution harms nearly every cell and organ of the body. So there's so much to say, and I know there are great speakers here, and we definitely support the comments made by the previous speaker on this item. So we are very excited for this to go forward and for you guys to lead, as you usually do on most everything North County and San Diego. So thank you again to everyone, and thank you. Huge shout out to the Encinitas Environmental Commission, Commissioner O'Connor and Kramer, and the outstanding work that goes on there. So thank you again.
Next speaker is John Bauer, followed by Yesenia Hernandez, and then Anthony Diaz.
Good evening. My name is John Bauer with cleanupforkids.org. I'm sure none of you are surprised that I am speaking in support of this. I think a big thing to consider is that burning anything creates toxins. It doesn't matter if it's tobacco or cannabis or even wood in your fireplace. That smoke, no matter what, the act of burning produces toxins. So it's not something that's, when someone lights up, they are poisoning themselves and everyone around them. Suzanne touched on Dr. Fowler's research out of the University of Aberdeen, and one of the things that he found from that research was that pregnant women exposed to secondhand smoke had a significantly higher chance of miscarriage. And in the U.S., 41,000 people die every year from secondhand smoke. Those are people who don't smoke, but simply being around someone who lights up killed 41,000 people. So the idea, from a life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness standpoint, people have the right as non-smokers to go down a public sidewalk or a public park or sit on a public bench and not get cancer from someone deciding they want to poison themselves. It's not a victimless crime. We definitely want people to go, if they have an addiction, which cigarettes are very addictive, as is a lot of other things that people smoke, they should go get help and get off of that addiction. The tobacco and smoking industry wants people addicted, and they market towards that. They don't market towards people my age. They market toward young people because they want addicts as young as possible, so they have lifelong customers. So we want to help them break that habit, but at the same time, they don't have the right to poison people. Again, it's 41,000 people die every year in this country from secondhand smoke, and that's not fair. And again, you've heard, a lot of other talk. Last time, I know, Mayor Krantz, you weren't here, secondhand smoke, third-hand smoke as well. So when someone smokes, there's the secondhand smoke. It's the smoke that's in the air. When that smoke settles on tables and chairs and surfaces, the toxins that are in that secondhand smoke are now on that surface. So if you touch it, or if someone hugs you that after you've smoked, those people, those children are now exposed to those same toxins. And washing your hands, research has shown 30 to 45 minutes later after you wash your hands, those toxins are right back. So, again, this is so important from a public health standpoint, from a social cost standpoint, and just from a pollution standpoint to stop public smoking. Thank you.
Yesenia Hernandez, followed by Anthony Diaz, and then Peggy Walker.
Hi, my name is Yesenia. I'm back. I told you, my generation, we don't quit. I was here last time that we talked about banning public smoking, and I kind of networked, to be honest. I promoted myself because I graduate this year, and I care about this city, so I will be here. You might come across my resume, so just please remember, I care. And I was here last time, and I know that you guys care. I know you guys care about Encinitas, and public smoking is harmful. And I actually talked to my sister about this because she lived in Encinitas for a while, And she was so relieved that I was telling her about this because she was like, I hate holding my breath when I pass by people that are smoking. And she's like, I hate doing that because it's just like, I don't want to breathe into that. And she loves it here. And so I think people really do care. And like a lot more people than you think really want change. A lot more people than you think really hate the public smoking that's going on. And it's my generation hates it too. Like, we don't want to be around that. I don't want to be around that. So I just want to bring it to your attention, and I want you guys to know that we are in support. I know you're in support, and so we can make it happen. Thank you.
And followed by Peggy Walker and then Vanessa Forsyth.
Hello, my name is Anthony Diaz. Thank you guys for having me here today, letting me speak. I'm here with my partner, Yesenia Hernandez, who is in full support of this Clean for Kids public smoking ban, and I'm in full support as well. I've been, sorry about that. I've been aware of the harm of public smoking and the emissions that can be breathed in, and I've personally have seen the public smoking by the beaches in the community, and I would like to see it decreased, especially in the youth. And I've been fully in support of this ban, and I really appreciate you guys' time and having you guys listen to me today. So thank you guys, and have a good one.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Walker. I'm here on behalf of my San Diego County Tobacco Control Coalition group to thank you and applaud you for this ordinance, for bringing it forward. We're grateful. Since there is no specific protected right to smoke, these kinds of ordinances are lawful, as you know, and are being adopted in many, many cities. As Crystal Nahara said, there are two goals: the environmental goal to protect our environment, and especially our oceans and waterways from hazardous and toxic waste, and the other goal to protect public health. You've heard lots about secondhand smoking. Thank you all for your comments. I'll add one thing. A UCF study found that secondhand smoke produces particulates that lodge, and from both tobacco and marijuana smoke, those particulates lodge deeply into the lungs, deeply, and ventilation in rooms is not enough to eradicate that secondhand smoke. These types of ordinance serve other purposes. I know it's been widely discussed, but other things that they do is to reduce healthcare costs, reduce addiction, increase cessation, and reduce smoking initiation among young people. So as Councilman Lyons said earlier, a couple of weeks ago, these are something that elevate our health as a community, and what could be better than that? We know that's important because more than 12 million premature deaths over the past 40 years were attributable to smoking. So I urge your approval, and thank you very much. And I especially want to thank Crystal Nahara for detailed hard work on this ordinance. Thank you.
Next speaker is Vanessa Forsyth, followed by Katie Papaniak.
Vanessa Forsyth, thank you for letting me speak again. Last time we were here, there were a number of people who shared, when we were addressing this, and we support, again, what's been presented and clarified in terms of the change. But this ordinance is really important. It does set an example, a precedent for other communities in North County. And also, I wanted to share that I am a retired school nurse. and and mostly worked with middle school kids. And some things have been mentioned regarding young people and smoking. The thing that's known is that young people who start smoking in their teens end up a high percentage continuing to smoke as adults, whether it's marijuana or vaping. And I think as much as possible, if we can limit public smoking, that will have an impact too on younger kids who, you know, hang out and think, oh, okay, we can smoke downtown and just be cool. And a lot of people also spoke last time about how they experience the effect of secondhand smoke in terms of family members who had cancer and other ill effects. So again, really support you taking this on, and thank you.
Last here. I just have to brag that Joy Rupert, I was her study buddy director at Capri, so I ought to just pat myself on the back. That girl is a leader. She's phenomenal. So I am here in support of 10C, the trifecta. I'm Katie Papaniak. I've been fortunate to live in Encinitas for a long time. I think you have been given pertinent information from the Environmental Commission and the staff, and I really appreciate that and all of the time that they put into it. So you know all about the many harms to our environment and the marine life of cigarette filters. I picked up one just at Club Shred last weekend. I did a little beach cleanup, so we still have a few around. I really appreciate the efforts here, and I support also the efforts of Tobacco Control Coalition, Clean Air for Kids, and San Diego Alliance for Drug-Free Youth's work, because we want to ensure public health for all. What I really love is that you guys are all looking at me, and that hasn't happened in years past. Thank you. My friends at Manhattan Beach say this type of ordinance there has been very successful, and they don't see so many butts and no smoke. So last time I was here about the ordinance, I reminisced about how long it took to get rid of smoke and cigarettes in planes and restaurants and at my workplace. I do have a daughter that was born with severe heart issues, and that was supposedly because there was a lot of smoke in my workplace. So it is a personal issue for me as well. But I did remember that I had a smoking roommate at Mary Birch with a newborn in the room. You guys are too young, many of you, to know this, but that was Mary Birch Hospital, and I had someone right next to me smoking and a brand new baby. So crazy world. We've come a long, long way fighting the tobacco industry, and I say let's keep going. Fight the good fight for Encinitas. There is not one good or healthy thing about cigarettes or smoking, and we're adding so many I said I live in a house, but we're adding all this multi-unit housing that we talked about, and those people aren't as lucky. They're going to have second and third-hand smoke. So my wish for this council is, again, I hope the council and the community will continue to protect our environment and our public health. Thank you.
That concludes speakers on this item.
Okay, thank you all who came out to speak. With that, I will close the public hearing. And now it is time for council deliberations and action. Deputy Mayor Lyons.
Thank you. I just want to be brief, and I want to say that the clarifications in this revised item for this hearing today were exactly what I thought we said. So I'm happy to give you my feedback that I think that we nailed the clarifications, and now we're going through the official process of reviewing and hopefully approving this again. And I do just want to play off of the 3 hearings tonight trifecta a little bit more in that I'm going to repeat what I said before. Anytime we can improve our environmental health, our public health, and our individual health with one action, then it's a really valuable move for us to make. So I'd like to move for approval of this item.
And I'll second that.
Councilmember Ehlers.
I just wanted to say there's an old saying in business, don't sell past the close, because you can only screw up the deal. So I'm done.
Okay, I
Very
think
good
that's a first right there. That's pretty short for Bruce. And I didn't get to speak the first time, so I'm going to share a couple of thoughts. One is that I grew up with a father who vehemently opposed smoking. He was a young 17-year-old Marine that went to boot camp here in San Diego and off to the Pacific, and used to get himself in trouble occasionally and have an assignment to clean up the camp. And he used to talk about how he just despised having to pick up cigarette butts, and so he would grind them into the ground. But that was before they had filters, so that was possible. But then he came back and ended up with a big family, and made it pretty clear to all his kids that smoking was the devil. We do have big tobacco that we fight against, and in fact, when the Marines and Army soldiers and airmen and naval people were out fighting World War II, they were getting packs of cigarettes in their rations that they would have. So that's how deeply ingrained smoking is in our culture. We had the Marlboro Man, we had movies where smoking was glamorized, and so it's not surprising that so many people were addicted to nicotine. I am very pleased to see how many people have given it up. I looked up the data, 9% of Californians still smoke. That said, I have friends who smoke, and they were disappointed in this because they are all responsible smokers and dispose of their butts properly. And I just had to let them know that it's unfortunate, but we have to oftentimes legislate to the lowest common denominator, people who just are prepared to flick their butts wherever they feel like it. So I saw an old junior high buddy who has been addicted to tobacco all his life, and he was really frustrated because when I saw him, he was walking in the El Portal undercrossing, and he was not happy to think that in a future date he would not be able to have a cigarette while he was on his nighttime walk. I assured him that he would figure out a way to get his smokes, and he agreed that that would happen. He accused the city of trying to pick on homeless people, because this would be a way that we could, those homeless people who smoke, the police could harass them. And so, not to suggest that that he was correct with that, but I would appreciate, Captain Lawrence, if you could speak to enforcement a little bit on this, and how you see your deputies enforcing this ordinance once it's in place.
Absolutely. So very similar to the previous ordinances that were in place, it's always education first. We give a little bit of a grace period, especially with vehicle codes is very similar. The DMV encourages a grace period so that everyone gets used to it, especially since we have a large transitory population that come in and out of the city. People may not be aware of our ordinances. After that, it's followed by warning, and then we will write citations when necessary. So.
Okay. Thank you. And I see no one else that has requested to speak. We have a motion and a second, so with that, we can vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
And I wanted to also thank Commissioner O'Connor and Kramer and the Environmental Commission for your efforts on this. Crystal, thank you to you as well, and Roy for the work. Thank you very much. Okay, I think our business is almost done. There are no informational items, there are no council member initiated items. Now that moves us to council member reports pursuant to AB 1234. Councilmember Blackwell.
None tonight.
None.
Just that we have the NCTD Rail Safety Community Enhancement meeting on Monday.
Nothing to report.
And I attended on Monday a San Leo Joint Powers Authority meeting with Councilmember Hinsey. She left this one for me to report on us both, and we reviewed the budget and talked a little bit about projects coming up in the future, and they are doing a lot of really great work at San Leo JPA. And I think that having an agency like that in our community that's so forward-thinking is pretty important. So I'm pleased with that. Number 14, city manager reports.
Just really quick, we've gotten some really good suggestions on keeping people updated on stone steps, which has gotten off to a slower start with finding a contractor, et cetera. So park staff will be putting up a QR code that people, if they walk by, they'll be able to get the information. It might already be there. I haven't been over there this week. And also, we're making good progress on Lake Drive and trying to keep the council updated on all of that. But if you're curious about that or you're interested in going out to Lake Drive, please let me know, and we'll have an engineer take you out there. It's kind of an interesting project to look at.
With regard to stone steps, if it's going to be a long time, is there a way that we could lower the fence down to the bottom of the stairs? Because that was a place that was very popular for people to get exercise, walking up and down the staircase.
That I don't know. We've closed it under the conditions and circumstances that the structural engineer told us to, but I'd be happy to ask.
Yeah, take a look at whether there's a way to move the fence down to the bottom of the stairs so people can continue to do their exercise. Thank you. City attorney reports.
No report this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. City clerk reports. No report. Nothing to report. No reports. With that, I wanted to thank you all for making the nominations and presentations for Women's History Month. I didn't expect to be crying, so, and I would appreciate if you could share with me the way that we can make a contribution for the folks in Ukraine, because I'd like to be able to do that. So with that, we're adjourned.